Hello and welcome back to another Design Clips here at W+9. This is Dawn Woolslegel, and today I have quite a few cards to share with you. This is part of a challenge tag, the Rainbow Card Challenge tag. So rainbows usually aren't my wheelhouse. However, I took a look at some of Laura Bassen's and Kelly Latavola's cards and was super inspired. So I came up with these 3 cards that all kind of chain reactioned off of each other. So I'm going to share with you my creative process along the way and show you these 3 cards. Now, working with lots of color can be challenging. I mean, we've got a rainbow, so we're talking at least 5 to 7 colors. And for me, the easiest way to deal with that many colors is to ground them. And the perfect way to ground them is using lots of black and white. So I'm going with the very bold and graphic imagery here. I think the panda would be perfect because he's black and white and I don't have to color him. So he'll stand out nicely against all of that color that we're going to add in the background. So I'm just stamping out several of the images from the W+9 Friend for All Seasons spring set. Not quite sure where I'm going with this card at this point, but I will have the images if I decide to use them. I'm going to ink these up in Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'm doing that because it's Copic friendly and I do plan to add color to like the little birds and the flowers and stuff. So I'm going to use my Misty tool. It's not a machine, there's no moving parts. So I'm going to use the Misty tool to ink this up and stamp it. And that's because I want to double stamp this because I want a nice deep solid black. And by using the Misty, I can stamp it twice without having to worry about whether they're going to line up well or not. I'm doing very simple coloring with Copics for my images. I am using 1, maybe 2 colors on each of these, and that's because I want these to be very graphic and very bold, and I don't want them to compete against all of the color that we're going to be adding in the background. And you can see here on the finished card, we have lots of ink blending and all those ink splats, so I really don't want these to get lost. I want them to stand out against all of that color in the background. So by keeping the coloring very simple and very graphic, we keep it clean and we keep it from getting over busy. Plus, the artistic styling of these images actually plays really well with this very simplistic coloring, so you don't really need to fuss a lot with them. So when I was looking through for inspiration, I told you I looked at Laura Bassen's, and she did a ink blended background that I thought was actually really gorgeous, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And I thought it would be great to create 2 cards at once. I knew I needed these numbers, and I thought, well, what if I use the negative space from this die with a beautiful ink blended background behind it, and then used all the same elements to create, my second card. And I thought, all right, well, that just means I need to pre-plan where I put these numbers when I die cut them. So I'm forming a square out of my dies, just laying out my dies to where they'll form a nice square. I'm putting it in the middle of my cardstock because at this point, again, I don't know exactly what my layout's going to be for the second card, but I know I want to use this. So I'm going to go ahead and line it up in the middle, and then I'm just going to run these through. Now I'm left with all of the positive numbers of the die cut that I'm going to use on this first card, and then I'm also left with the negative little frame-like piece here that I'm going to use on the second card with a nice ink blended background behind it. And while I've got the big shot out, I'm going to go ahead and die cut my elements here using the companion die for the Friends for All Seasons spring set. And I'm just holding them in place with a little bit of low-tack washi tape. I have a magnetic platform here, but I find that sometimes, especially when I'm putting multiple dies on at one time, the polar, I don't know, the positive, negative polars of the magnetic thingy, they like to jump around on me on the mat. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but sometimes they just kind of jump around on me. Anyway, so now I am just going to spend a copious amount of time playing around with these numbers and getting this to look just the way I like it. And I'm going to time lapse into how it ended up right here. Okay, so now that I've got it exactly how I want it, it's time to start adding my color to these numbers. Now, just a heads up, if you were not planning to use that negative die cut for a second card, it would be much easier to sponge your color onto a solid piece of cardstock, a full piece, and then die cut your number from that. However, because I wanted to use that negative piece and then use the resulting numbers, I was trying to do less waste here, okay? I was trying to make use of something that I would otherwise throw away. I was being conscientious. of the planet. Yes, that's what I was doing. I'm coloring them afterwards. Now, this was a little bit difficult because they wanted to move, and there was, it's hard to hold an ink blend because your finger's kind of in the way. So what I did was I took a sticky note and I just put half of the number onto the sticky portion of the Post-it there, and it kind of holds it in place for me while I do my ink blending. Now, obviously, you have to have a light hand because that stick is not sticky enough to hold it if you are going to town on these things. However, it does hold it well enough if you are just lightly ink blending over it, which happens to work out better anyway, because I find that when you're doing this sponging ink blending, it's better to work in lighter layers and build it up than to try to like put in a whole bunch of color at once, because it's just going to blob on there and then you're not going to be able to blend it out. It's like too much ink. It just goes straight into the paper and you're not blending it out. You're now stuck with it. So that is my little tip of the day. Now, I chose to work in rainbow order here, but I only have 5 numbers, so I picked 5 colors. I chose Gala Red, Pumpkin Spice, Last Leaf, Bo Peep, and now I'm finishing up with our cockle shell. So it looks like he's kind of walking across this number line, and he's holding up the number 5, which this would be a 5th birthday card. But you could replace it with any number that you needed to, or of course you could combine 2 numbers together for an older look. I think that even though this is I'm choosing 5, so it's a kid's birthday card. However, I think this design is universal enough that it would stretch across any age and any gender. Now, normally when I do a video, I have a really good idea of what I'm going to do before I start filming. This one, I did work on the fly, so I felt like it still needed something to ground it. So I'm going to use our Ink Splat stamp set, and I'm going to add a splash of color in each of the numbers, respective colors behind it. So I think this is just going to break it up. It's going to add a little something to the background without distracting too much, and I really like how this turned out. So each time I'll use a little something different from each of the images in the stamp set. Sometimes I'll stamp the full splat, sometimes I'll just stamp a portion of it. And again, I really like how this turned out, and I think it added a lot to the design. Okay, once that was all finished up, it was time to start focusing on my sentiment, and for that, I'm going to be using the Sending, Hoping, Wishing stamp set. And in here, there's large words like sending, hoping, wishing, and then there's little sub-sentiments. And I chose to use the birthday wishes. So right now, you can see me, I'm trying to figure out, do I want to stamp it directly on the card? Do I want to add it as a layer? So when I have trouble deciding which I want to do, I just go ahead and I stamp it out. And I know I'm going to be making 2 cards, so I'm going to stamp it out twice. And try it first as its own layer, because once I stamp it on the card front, I can't take it off. But if I stamp it on the layer first and decide that I want it directly on the card front, well then, hey, no harm, no foul. I can then just stamp it on the card front. And in this case, I decided that I did want it on a separate layer, and I was going to pop it up 1-dimensionals. So I'm going to go ahead and prep that, and then I can start adhering all of the rest of the things to my card. And at this stage, I'm kind of deciding on the fly, again, which ones I want to glue directly to the card base and which ones I want to pop up for dimension. So I'll be gluing them directly to the card front using Multimedia Matte. That's my favorite. And then I will be popping them up using some 3M foam dimensional tape. Kind of went back and forth here. So I glued one directly down, popped up the next, glued one down, popped up the next, glued one down. So it was kind of like up, down, up, down. Very scientific. And when it came time to add the 7 that he was standing on, I wanted to make sure that was straight, so I did use my T-square ruler just to line that up and make sure that that was straight. And then as well, I wanted to create a continuous baseline between at least 2 of the numbers. So here the 2 and the 6 are almost on the same line anyway, so I just used that to line up my 2 and my 6 as well. I adhered the rest of the elements using some foam tape, and then I still couldn't decide whether it needed something, but I decided in the end that I did want to add a large sending die cut. Now, this is from the Sending, Hoping, Wishing die set, so I just die cut that from black cardstock, and to my delight, because honestly, I did not plan this out. It fits perfectly right above the panda's head, and all of the foam adhesive is perfectly placed to where I can just slip this right in. That never happens, people. I didn't have to rip anything off this card. So I'm just going to go with it was meant to be. And I didn't have to make any further decisions. It just had to go in there. So that's how I finished off this card. I trimmed it down to 4 by 5.5 inches and adhered it to a white card base. So let's move straight into the second card now. So I have this leftover panel from die cuts in the first card, and I decided that I wanted to create an inked background to go behind it. Again, I'm creating on the fly, so at this point I'm thinking I'm going to use the whole card base. So I'm going to tape this down. I'm going to tape off that top edge so that I know where the top of my card is. And then I'm going to divide up the remaining space between the 7 colors. And so I'm counting out how many squares I need to mask off or leave showing to do my inking at a time. And it comes out to like 3, and then there's like just a little bit of change left over, and I'm just going to make that up at the end. So I'm going to do 3 at a time, and then I'm going to ink the space that's showing between them. Now, I'm not going to show you this whole thing because I actually saw this in a video, again, from Laura. I wasn't stalking her, I promise. But she has a video on this. So instead, I'm just going to link, there should be a card showing up here right about now. And if you click on that, you can go see exactly how this is done from the queen herself, because she can show you much better than I can. All right, so now that we have our background all done, all we have to do is overlay this panel. And I ended up trimming this down to 4 by 4, and then I'm going to put it on a top folding card base that I've trimmed down to 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. I'll adhere this panel directly to my inked background. I'm going to use a little bit of Tombow permanent tape runner to do that, and then press that down. Now, I did get a little bit of that tape runner was showing through in a couple little spots. So I just used an adhesive pickup. What is this? Actually, what is that for? Where did I get that? Oh, I remember. Okay, Incredible White. It's a Frisket pickup, little eraser thing, but it works great for picking up adhesive off your cards too. So quick tip. So I'm using pretty much these same elements in the same arrangement as I did on the last card. This time I just added a little banner from the Banner Trio die, and that was again just something to ground that little panda and hold all of these little arrangements together. I just love the way this one turned out as well. I think the background reminds me of like, I don't know, like an 80s album cover. I don't know, and 1987 just really stands out. I thought it would be a great idea if you did a card similar to this, but arranged your numbers to where they were the birth year of the recipient, and then the panda was holding the age. I thought that would be really cute too. Unfortunately, I already had mine all together already, you know. I was using my leftovers, so I couldn't change it now. Then I wouldn't be using my leftovers. Okay, so I adhered everything down using a combination of Tombow tape runner and 3M foam tape. And now I have one last card to show you, and it is a spin-off of the first card. Now this card uses the same concept as the first one, except for instead of going horizontally with the numbers, I decided to stack them vertically and have the panda standing on top of the pile there. So I thought that this was really cute, and just to make it a little different, instead of taking my color and fading it off into white, I decided to ink these and transition into the next color. So for this one, I am starting on one side with the yellow, and then I will flip it around and bring in the green. So we get this nice little transition. And then from the green, we'll go into the blue, and then from the blue into the purple. And then for this card, I decided to make it a Sweet 16 card. Again, I think this design is perfect. It spans across all ages. It's just a super universal, cute design. And then again, just like the first card, I'm going to add ink splats to the background, just to give it a little more interest and something to ground that stack of numbers. Once I adhered everything down, I just trimmed this down to 3 3/4 by 5.5 inches. So now I have 3 cards that were all inspired by each other, by the Rainbow Challenge tag, and by Laura Bassen. So I think it's only right that I tag Laura to take on this challenge next. And I would also like to tag another queen of color, Sherry Carroll. She has the most amazing eye for color, although I don't often see her work with bright colors, so I would be very interested to see her take this on. Likewise, if you think that this is fun and you would like to participate, go ahead and do a Rainbow Challenge video and tag 2 people that you'd like to see take it on. Again, thank you guys so much for watching and for sticking with me. I know this was a pretty long one, but you can find all of the supplies and more information in the description box below, as well as on our blog at stampawaywithme.blogspot.com. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!